so much marketing is actually just comms. Like we take a message from the business, we take our value proposition and we distribute it in lots of different ways and lots of different channels. But actually, there's no strategic marketing insight formed from that.
A big part of the board's responsibility is not to tell them the CEO what to do, but it is to evaluate whether that leadership team is a strong, competent, and together leadership team. Because if they're not together, that's i- it can be pretty obvious.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you as usual and joined by our, I would say, regular guest now, Blend's US CEO, Josh Bauk. And on today's episode, we are talking about what the board actually wants to know from marketing. And there's going to be a lot of information in here about what the board need to see from marketing, but also hopefully a few nuggets of information about what marketing can actually get from the board. And Josh, really great to have you here because obviously you've got experience on both sides of the coin.
Sure, yeah, it's great to be back. I being called a regular is a lot of fun. I feel like I should put that on my LinkedIn profile, and but but yeah, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we've got a pretty packed episode today of information, all about what the board really care about when it comes to marketing. And ultimately, when we work in businesses, particularly for PE or venture capital backed companies, there are some principles that need to apply to marketing information delivered to the board and ultimately understanding what they care about and how you help them and the rest of the business achieve its goals. Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow. Because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today. So, Josh, I think the first thing to cover is actually understanding the responsibility of the board,
Yeah,
because that
yeah,
really
sure.
unpacks everything else.
Yeah, and that differs. But at the top level, uh, boards are a fiduciary body. They are responsible for governance, and they're responsible for protecting the best interests of the shareholders. They are not there to micromanage management, although that sometimes happens. But good ones don't. They're really there to understand the business, understand the risks to the business, the opportunities, and and how that impacts shareholder value. And their job is to help the CEO and well, primarily the CEO make sound decisions and make sure that there's um, uh, policies and procedures and process to make sure that risk management is well governed, if you will. And so that's across any kind of company. That's really the purpose of the board. The if you're a VC backed company or if you're a PE backed company, there are some nuances. Obviously, if you're a VC backed company, it's all about growth. You're trying to get to, the way you create shareholder value is different, uh, largely than in a traditional PE backed firm. And then there's growth equity that's kind of in the middle. But in a buyout firm, like a pure PE, like traditional PE, they're going to be it's going to be a very small board, typically just the PE firm or firms who are representatives on the board, and maybe one or two independent board members that they choose to bring in. who are going to be um, usually industry experts and people that they trust to give sound advice. Um, on the and so, but their shareholder value for a PE firm is all PE uh, businesses are trying to return 2 to 4x the capital invested over time, but they're trying to do that evenly across their portfolio. They don't want, you know, they want zero losers,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Where a VC firm is much more speculative, and so they're trying to create the home runs, and they expect 9 out of 10 to fail, but they're really those boards are focused on, are we getting market adoption? Are we driving growth as fast as we can? Do we have enough capital to be able to sustain that growth? Do we need to raise more capital, and so on? And so, what the levers are that each of those boards is trying to work with to create shareholder value is different, but ultimately what their purpose is the same.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that, you mentioned the board understanding the industry. They're brought in for their industry expertise. They understand.
The independents, yeah, the
Yes.
independent board members, yeah,
But they might, well, they won't have the same understanding of the business and how it's running on a day-to-day basis, and
correct.
the impact of individual functions, and even the market to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's actually quite hard to be a board member. Um, I've been in the boardroom most of the last 20 years, and so in on one side or the other. And often when you're in management, you think it's common to think that the board is going to be right there with you. You talk to them quarterly. Maybe there's some meetings in between, or just conversations that are happening, certainly between the CEO and some of the board for sure. But you go into that board meeting, you're excited to talk about what's going on, and you know so many uh, management team leaders tend to dive way down into the weeds, and as a board member who maybe got a pre-read, one of the companies I was with, the pre-read was 900 pages. 900 pages that they got several days before the board meeting,
Wow.
and they were expected to read or consume
Yeah.
most or all of it, depending on what that. Now, that was a publicly traded company. That you wouldn't see that in most PE or venture backed firms, but um, but to be able to go from not having talked about to that company in a couple of months to walking in and being able to understand and grasp what's going on in the business, can be very, very difficult. And so I think it takes a lot of preparation for a management team to make sure that they bring their board along in ways that don't talk down to them. Don't like, these are really smart people. They're really educated, really strong professionals. Typically, they they need to be you need to help them get to where you are in your understanding of the business, but um but you also need to walk a minute in their shoes and have a feel have an appreciation for the fact that you're asking them to go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour to see that I use metric to to achieve um uh to get to where you are in your day-to-day understanding. So yeah, it's just, we've got to prep.
Yeah. I want to get on to your three buckets. But first, can you just take us behind the scenes of some example boardrooms and conversations where that have come up that would greatly benefit from marketing's input, value, insights, and some of those scenarios. So then I think when we jump into those buckets, it's clear where they have value.
um yeah, sure. Let's see. So um a board member who's coming in, like we said in the opening, they want to understand risks to the business. They want to understand um, what's happening outside of the business and in the broader ecosystem that the business operates in. They want to understand what's happening in the customer base and in the and you know they and sort of they want a survey of all the different elements of the business, the different departments or however you're organized. They want to get a feel for that. But what they also want to do is they want to really get a feel for how well that executive team is working together. A big part of, especially in the PE and venture boards, a big part of the board's responsibility is not to tell them the CEO what to do, but it is to evaluate whether that leadership team is a strong, competent, and together leadership team. Because if they're not together, that's you know, it can be pretty obvious if your product person and your sales leader are in different camps, and don't like each other. That becomes pretty clear, and so that's a big part of what they're trying to get at too. Um, yeah, I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's what comes to mind.
No, you did. Yeah, I suppose I wanted to tee us up for these three different buckets of board level information, board level marketing information that's actually useful, and understanding, yeah, some of the nuances in conversations and things that would come up and the things they're looking for
Yeah,
actually highlight the value of these three buckets and where they, um,
got it.
you know,
Well, maybe let's just jump into the
so
buckets and we'll talk about those with each one.
you want to go through?
Um, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So this is a way of thinking about not just what the board cares about, but what management and the board in a strong partnership should care about together, and how they communicate and what they ask from each other. And so we've broken it into three buckets just to for particularly for marketing. And I would even go so far as to say marketing and sales leaders who are um, stepping into the boardroom and are going to have dialogue and present materials and have opportunities to ask for things. um, how they should think about how they're helping the board do their jobs and vice versa. So let's jump in.
Yeah,
Bucket one.
go for it. Understanding revenue flow and levers.
Right. So marketing and sales, it's the front end of the business. It's revenue generation primarily. Um, and yes, that's an oversimplification, but big picture. And uh, so what the board wants to understand is how does this how does this business generate revenue? There's all kinds of ways to generate revenue depending on your pricing models, depending on your product types, depending on your channels. And so helping them understand how revenue, starts with a lead or an inkling of a possibility. I won't even call it a lead yet, but just
Yeah,
and then flows through that development process and then where it turns into actual revenue and how revenue is recorded. And then and then all the levers in that just to get to the first dollar or pound of revenue with a new customer. But then beyond that, the, uh, the the wallet share, the white space, the what the company's doing to make sure they get as much of the revenue per account per customer that they can, and the systems that are in place to do that. Like they want to see that I'm on management side, that we have um a process, a machine that is connected and works together, and that we understand, when we pull this lever, we should be able to get this result. And when we pull this lever, right? So, um, so let me pause there. But that at a big picture, bucket one is all about helping the board get to a place where they understand how revenue generation works.
yeah. Yeah, and so that is at the highest level in terms of revenue generation, right? We've got partnerships, we've got inbound sources, we have other sources of revenue income, and then I suppose the next step. Well, actually, it'd be interesting to hear.
So that's those are channels, right? And that's true, and that's what marketing will often think about. But if we want to think about revenue as, I give you an example. We're working with a customer right now. Some of their revenue comes from traditional subscription. You develop leads, you qualify those leads, you build pipeline, you close deals. When you close that deal, you start billing and you get subscription revenue. And so you
Yep.
get the same revenue every month. Great, super. Easy to understand. And that's sort of like traditional SaaS. Okay, great. But they have another part of their business, a substantial part, that is contingency based. It is based on outcomes that they create for their customers. So if the customer gets, X outcome, they get Y revenue. Well, now revenue generation moves past sale, right? You have to know how your sale is working, but then the board needs to understand the components of delivery that result in better outcomes for better outcomes that are driven, because that actually drives revenue. It's not just about customer satisfaction and customer retention. It's a factory. It has a literal impact on exactly how much revenue we collect. And in that case, that particular business, it's several months after sale that the first bit of revenue actually starts coming in. So if you're a board member and you think, oh, sales is telling me they've got this great pipeline and everything's great and it's going to be rosy, and it's this huge amount of new business, but you don't anticipate that it's a contingency based and therefore questionable, whether depending on the performance of the actual service delivery, and two, it's several months down the road, then when you're thinking about, does the company have enough cash flow to keep going? Do they have, is the working capital solid? Like, as a board, evaluating risks, you don't understand, if you're not given that level of granularity and understanding, you're going to have ugly surprises down the road potentially.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to just know how, excuse me, how the business creates revenue. Um, and then track it back to, okay, so now what are my channels, and how do I make it go faster, or what investments can I make to optimize, and how do I measure each, and all the types of things that traditional marketing does think about.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I love this podcast, because right there, I've done what a lot of our listeners would do, right? And I've jumped straight down a level into channels, not even marketing channels per se, but like business channels of
Hmm.
net new revenue. Um,
Hmm.
and I suppose the question is, so if we're going down a level to that, and we're not talking about actual income streams in terms of channels, is that something even worth presenting to the board? Is that something they care about, seeing the levers we can pull in those areas, or is that getting too granular?
Yeah, it depends on the business for sure. The I would I think when you think about what the board wants, they definitely don't want, a chart with 50 channel partners with that each have 2% of delivery.
Yeah,
But if you've got a channel partner that is generating 35% of your revenue, that channel partner poses great risk to the business
mm,
if they disappear, right? And so, knowing what, surfacing those key relationships and explaining how they're going at maybe a very granular level, because it has so much risk to the
yeah,
business, is really important. I have another client that signed Walmart. Walmart can be a great revenue generation opportunity. It can also be a huge pull on operational expenses and profitability. I mean, I don't think I'll get sued for saying this. Walmart is very good at vendor management and driving down costs. And As a result, there are plenty of vendors out there who initially get excited about landing a deal with Walmart and then discover that they can't be profitable because of the demands, both from a cost and a service level. And so, um, and I'm not picking on Walmart. That's just this particular example. But being able to talk about like a deal like that with the board and helping them understand the details of it is going to be important. But walking them through every deal that's 0.5% of your revenue increase, they don't want to see that. That's not helping them evaluate risk. They want to see those in the aggregate. How much do we have? How many deals do we have? What's
Yeah.
our close rate? They want to look at those macro trends, but then they want to go micro. They're going to want to go micro when it comes to big things, like big, important, heavy things. And then they may want to go very micro and really want to understand exactly what's going on, particularly if you're a mid-market company. Once you get up into the enterprise levels, the business is just usually too big to be, they're, the board really is about governance and M&A, and that's about as deep as they go. But in the mid-market, yeah, you've got board partners who are, who do want to get into the weeds a little bit when it comes to understanding the key deals, right? So it's wouldn't be uncommon for a CRO to present his top 10 deals for the quarter, or her 5 biggest partnerships that she's trying to land, and what are those, where do they stand in the pipeline, and so on.
And does what you're presenting vary based on a VC funded company versus PE backed?
Only in on the PE side, they're going to be far more cost conscious usually, in the and less speed focused, right? Most PE owned companies don't need to double in size every year, triple in size every year. A lot of VC VC owned companies, that the definition of success is driven by growth rate.
Yeah.
And so the focus is going to be far less focused on, other than, yes, you will need to address cash burn because you'll have to determine, do we have enough capital to get to where we feel like we want to do the next raise, where the next raise is, is of benefit to our shareholders, right? It's creating value for our shareholders. It's not taking more money at a lower valuation and injuring our shareholders, right?
Yeah, makes sense. So I suppose what you were saying around presenting data is it's high level, but if we imagine a pie chart, and where there are big segments of those pie charts, there might be an opportunity to dig into those things, or you might be expected to dig into them.
Think of it like a bubble chart. Bubble chart is a great way to actually present data to the board, right? Because you'll see a whole bunch of little bubbles all clustered together, and then you'll see this gigantic bubble over here. That one is worth digging into at a total. The rest of them, not so much, right? They're all operating within the normal bounds.
That's a good visual. If you're listening to this right now, you're probably doing what every other B2B marketer is doing, asking, how do I get my brand cited in ChatGPT? How do I show up in Gemini, Perplexity, Claude? And at Blend, we help you do exactly that. We engineer visibility in AI search for B2B companies. We build the content, implement the technical optimization, and track your performance across every major AI platform. So when buyers are researching solutions like yours, your brand gets recommended. We know how to engineer visibility in AI search because we built a framework and proved it on ourselves first. And this took months of experimentation, but in the end it delivered 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate across prompts, and 250% more AI-sourced leads. We proved the framework, and now we're starting to roll it out across customers who are seeing similar results. So, if you want to dominate AI search in your category, visit blendb2b.com to learn more about our AI search services. If you're enjoying this show, let me recommend another one from the HubSpot Podcast Network, Billion Dollar Moves, hosted by Sarah Chen Spellings. Sarah sits down with the leaders actually building category-defining businesses and pulls out the strategies and hard lessons that shaped their success. Her recent episode with Taiwan's CEO explores how he's reinventing a 77-year-old family business for modern markets. Whether you're scaling or transforming your own business, there's a lot to learn here. Listen to Billion Dollar Moves wherever you get your podcasts. All right, should we get into bucket 2?
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, so this is, well, did we explain what the buckets are? I think so.
I don't think we did. So
Should we backtrack on that?
bucket 1 was understanding how revenue gets created. And so it's an inside the walls look at your business.
Yeah.
So bucket 1 is all about making sure the board understands how revenue works inside whatever business you're in and how you're managing that. Bucket 2 is looking outside the business and helping the board see macro and micro market trends that are opportunities and threats. And this is where I think most marketing leaders fail, if I'm honest. And part of it is because they often are so, like, we're talking about relatively small businesses, right? Businesses under $500 million in revenue. They don't have armies of market analysts running around the business. They have a small marketing team, and so when that marketing leader comes in, he or she's very naturally going to focus on what is going on in the business, because that's where they spend most of their time. The really good ones are always keeping an eye outside and are finding ways to identify what's happening in their market. So, what's happening in M&A inside their market, what competitors are getting bought, who's making moves. Are there PE firms that are running roll-up plays? Are there, who's going public? Those kinds of things that are individual company competitor information. But then also more macro, how is AI impacting this market? And that's just the easy one to hit because it's so top of mind for everybody right now. But there are bigger trends that will impact and have, from small impact to existential crisis, right? Like if you asked me right now, what I would tell you in our space is that marketing firms, growth engineering firms, whatever we want to call ourselves as a cluster, those that don't embrace AI didn't already and aren't now and are trying to, swim against the tide, they're not going to be in business in 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And so at a macro level, if I was a board member of Blend, I would want to understand what you, Dan, see in how AI tools are being adopted by competitors of ours and what that's enabling them to do, whether it's enabling them to impact revenue, earnings, customer acquisition, staffing strategies, what have you, right? And how the value of that is being perceived by your customer base and those kinds of things. There are plenty of other macro trends, right? The cost of oil, depending on your business, there's big trends that happen in industry that depending on your business, you're going to be more or less sensitive to. Like, we don't care about the cost of oil, except we have to drive our cars to the office. But for a company that's in plastics, they might very much care about the cost of oil.
Yeah, and just because we don't care about the cost of oil, though, if we served a particular market, if for some reason we niched ourselves down and we were a growth engineering company for plastic manufacturers, well, all
Yeah, exactly right.
maybe one day we should
That's exactly.
deeply care about the cost of oil.
So you think about, okay, so in our company, we do a lot of work with life science companies and healthcare companies, healthcare tech companies. Well, depending on the administrative or administration in Washington, in the U.S., that market can fluctuate quite broadly based on policy. We handle or we work with a lot of financial services and fintech companies. Again, fiscal policy and maybe compliance and you know the degree of oversight that the federal government, state governments exercise on those companies has a direct impact on their ability to grow their businesses and how much, frankly, how much uh, money they have for marketing investments, which then impacts us, right? And so yeah, you're right. If we had a board that we were reporting to, we would want to be able to um, articulate for each of our big channels what our customers are going through and why. Tariffs are another, like right
Yeah,
now, tariffs are a massive issue for a lot of businesses, and so all of our manufacturing partners that we work with, that's directly impacting their profitability and what their growth strategies are, and as a result that impacts us, and so we should understand that those topics, and if we had a board we would want them to understand those topics so that we could have a meaningful conversation about together about where do we invest, what's the strategy of our company, how do we game plan for what happens in scenario A versus scenario B in each of those spaces. Those are the meaty conversations that boards do want to get into. The strategic discussions, they start to surface. Are there Do we need to go buy somebody? Are there M&A decisions we need to make because of these things? And so yeah, I mean, the marketing leader who wants to have a seat at the table, the more they can command the table with knowing really what's going on in the world and not just in their company, is like that's they're going to be relied on. That's going to be an important ability. And for the ones that get it, like they crush it.
yeah. So Phil and I in an episode a while back were talking about the difference between marketing and marketing communications, because so much marketing is actually just comms. Like, we take a message from the business, we take our value proposition and we distribute it in lots of different ways and lots of different channels. But actually there's no strategic marketing insight formed from that. There's no buyer intelligence, like market intelligence, actually being delivered to the business there. It's just pure comms. And I think a lot of marketers will be guilty of actually having the title of, VP of marketing, CMO even, but actually just be marketing comms. And I think, what you've just described there is, amazing, like really insightful. And actually, the knowing where the value is to the board, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
communications should just happen. Like, that is a segment of marketing's job. But actually the strategic role of marketing in a business is way, way broader than just communication. And
Should be.
it should be.
Oftentimes isn't,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I would say 90% of the time isn't. But it's an opportunity. And if you're a marketing leader who, doesn't want to be pigeonholed into the how many leads did you create this month, um, that's a big part of, getting a seat at the table.
Yeah. And I just think, and we've spoken about this before, like the just the role that marketing has in the business and the function in itself being like so different other functions in the business, and it's such an amazing point to actually to represent the customer, to represent the market and the buyer, to have all of the insight from
Yep.
sales, from product, from customer success inside, but have the outside perspective. And I think a lot of product teams that I've worked with before are great at doing this with select customers, with like select user groups, but still won't have the full market perspective that marketing can bring with research, with
Hmm.
macro insights if they go that far.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think um, as you're growing your career in marketing, um, training yourself to read the Wall Street Journal, to read economic reports, um, and to question, do I really understand this? Do I understand what it's telling me? Um, and how does this then impact? Like that's a you don't turn that on overnight, and you don't feed it to Claude. Frankly, like you can't cheat this
Yeah.
one, because you can cheat it to the extent that Claude will give you some good ideas about what's happening in the world, or Gemini or whatever. But as soon as you get into the conversation, you throw up your slide, here's what's happening, and you can learn how to present it. And
Mhm.
as soon as they start asking questions, it's gonna be clear you don't actually know what you're talking about. And so I like to me, as we mentor younger generations of marketers, teaching what I'll call kids, but uh, the only because I have kids that age, the teaching them that there's more to, like, yes, you do need to learn demand gen, and you need to learn how to build recurring, or predictable uh, demand gen cycles. Uh, and you need to understand martech, and you need to understand AI, and all this the stuff that's inside your business. Great. But to know that you need to carve out time, and you need to find ways to learn about and keep your head above water and outside the organization, and understand what's going on in the world and in your customers, know who your customers are, know what's what's impacting their world. That kind of that usually comes after about 30 years in business. and and it would be great, like, if I could do it all over again, I would learn that lesson way earlier on. uh
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. I think that's probably one of my favorite segments, you know, in a long time on this podcast. That's awesome.
All right,
All right.
bucket two. We'll get tattoos of bucket two, and to remind us.
Yeah. Well, should we check bucket two off? I think that one's
Bucket two's done,
yeah.
done and dusted.
All right. Let's go into bucket three. And oh
Okay,
yeah, this is sorry, I just scrolled down in the notes. Yes. This is, when we were having the pre-conversation to this.
this is my favorite bucket.
Yeah, this is a really, really good one. Unexpected one.
Yeah. um yeah. Okay, you want to tee it up, or you want me to?
I'll go for it. There's lots of things that as marketers, and I'm guilty of this too, we always think about what the business wants from us. We think about,
Mhm.
what the C-suite wants from us. We think about what the board wants from us. We rarely stop and think about what they can act, what value they have, the network they have, like what can they actually give us to make our jobs easier, to make our lives easier, and actually to make our futures better.
Mhm. You teed that up beautifully. A board member, particularly a board member of a VC owned or PE owned company, but this is true in public companies too. It's maybe not as overt, but in a private company that's investor backed, those investors are 100% tied to the success of that business. Like, their reputations, their own performance within their firms, their futures are tied to your company's performance. So they are there to gauge the risk of their investment, but they do want to be supportive. They are usually financial people, not salespeople, but um, but they all have uh, networks. They all have relationships, And so it behooves the smart marketer, the smart CRO, to go and research your board members and connect with them on LinkedIn and research their networks, and then in board meetings have on the agenda, who is the board going to introduce us to this quarter? Because they should be a phenomenal source of high level executive leads. They should be able to, they don't expect them to carry the sale, but to get you into either a direct customer at a very senior level, sometimes at a board level. I have I can't say the name of the company of the account, but a very large e-commerce company that's publicly traded. One of our customers had a wonderful board member that had a relationship with one of that company's board members, and they made the intro, and that intro went to the CEO of that company. This is a huge company. CEO of that company then, or that guy then turned around and introduced uh, us to them to the EVP of the area that we would need to go in at. This company normally ends up selling in at a VP or director level, and now they're at the EVP and having a conversation that is meaningful
Yeah.
to her, and so um, like board members can be really, really helpful that way, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to set the expectation up front. Hey, by the way, we're going to ask you to help us get into some places, and we'd like you to be willing to do so. And 9 out of 10, 19 out of 20, like I can't remember a board member telling me no,
Yeah.
unless they're just not confident. Like if the company's I've been in a couple of turnarounds, and if the company's uh not if they're in a process to improve the quality of the product, or the quality of the service, and there's not a lot of confidence at the board level yet, they may not make that intro, um, for risk of their own reputation. But generally, you've got a good product. The board believes in it. They invested in it. They believe in it. They want to see you be successful. You should be leveraging them as a key part, a key channel. And I would, in fact, in Salesforce or in HubSpot, um, you should have lead source. Board members should be one of your lead sources, and
Yeah.
celebrate it when it happens. Right? It's not. It may not be as repeatable at a macro level. If you're trying to close 100 deals a quarter, and your board's probably not going to get you into 50 of them, but um, it can find some short wins, some reduce the sales cycle, and I just think it's something that people don't think about very
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. You have. I've never heard, like, until we had this conversation, it hadn't been, laid on the table to me before in other podcasts I consume. Any content really. Nobody talks about how the inside team uses the board. Yeah, I think it's such a valuable piece of information. And like you said, you can make it really easy potentially if you do the research for them.
Well,
Which is amazing.
so that's really important. It's important that you go with specific asks.
Yeah,
No board member wants to be told, "Hey, can you go get me my 3 leads this month?" But if they say, "Hey, I see you know Sally at XYZ, um, can you make an intro?" Yeah. Oh yeah, Sally and I went to business school together. Let me go make that intro, right? And all kinds of good things happen when that happens.
yeah. And I suppose you've got to have a good relationship with the board before you start making these asks, right? If
Mhm.
you're new to the business, you start making these asks right away. Is that going to go down
Well,
badly?
no, I agree. So, well, I partially agree. I think um, I think the CEO should always be able to ask the board for support.
Yeah,
I think the marketing team, yes, the marketing leader or the sales leader needs relationship with those board members, needs trust, um, but the CEO should already have their trust. If and so in the beginning, do the research, feed it through your CEO, ask, but don't wait. Like
Yeah.
those relationships are gold, and they can, have urgency. It can generate revenue now. Let's go do it. But um, but over time, yeah, you want to see your relationship with board members improve. So that's the flip side of that. If a board member opens the door to somebody, you better keep them
Yeah.
informed,
Yeah.
right? Like making sure. It's so tempting to be like, oh, great, thanks. All right, I'm on my way. I'm going to go close that deal. And then you forget to tell them how things are going or where, like, and then they end up hearing, oh, yeah, like every board member, if they open the door, they want to know exactly
Mm.
what's going on. Um, and um, yeah. And so just put a tickler in,
Yeah.
make sure you're updating them,
That's their
and,
it's their
you know,
reputation, right? Like
good,
it's like
good or bad. Like
yeah.
even if it doesn't go well.
It's like if you set two friends up to be together, right? I've got a buddy and I have a girlfriend and I set them up because I think they're a great match. You want to, you want the updates
That's right.
in a
Mm,
yeah,
sort
roundabout
of.
way. So, any closing thoughts? You want to round us off?
You know, I think I think it's uh if you're a marketing leader, if you're an aspiring marketing leader, to think in these three buckets, and to think about how you're engaging the board, and really trying to put their shoes on, um, and not just looking for an attaboy, but actually um, wanting to have a meaningful conversation and being willing to. So many marketing presentations at a board, when I'm on the boards, are whirlwinds. They present speaking really fast, and it's almost like they're in a race to sit back down and don't want to be questioned. And all I want to do is have an interesting conversation and think about things with them. So tell me what I need to know, and then let's talk about it. um, I think if you can know your stuff, get comfortable with those three buckets, but the first two in particular is kind of your part, um, and then present it in a way that doesn't force them to know everything that's going on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in your
Yeah.
in your office, but is but are trends and macro level, and then big, like we say, the big bubbles. You're going to be aces, and you're going to be a trusted partner with those boards, and they're going to want to see more of you. Mm, you know that's good. That's good for your career and for the company.
Cool. Amazing. All right. Let's leave it there. Thanks, Josh.
All
That
right.
was that had a lot of good insight in. I think,
Cool.
yeah,
It was
I think
fun.
listeners will be loving that. All right.
I always love
Amazing.
talking to you.
We will catch you all in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Before you go, if all you can think about right now is AI search and how buyers are using it to find products in your category, we should talk. At Blend, we've built a proven framework for answer engine optimization. We tested it on ourselves first and saw 470 high value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate, and a whopping 250% increase in AI source leads. That's real high intent leads who are finding us through AI search. We've since rolled it out to dozens of clients who are now seeing similar results. Our AI service engineers your visibility in ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, Gemini through structured content, schema markup, and continuous optimization, and measurement through our partner Scrunch. If you want to show up when your buyers are asking AI tools for recommendations in your category, find out more about our AEO services at blendb2b.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.